Next morning, the doctor came to my hospital bed and said something I will never forget, Tyler. She said, Mr. Gordon, this is beyond us. We can do nothing more for you here. Where do you want to go?
So coma for 5 days. How long was the total duration in the hospital?
65 days.
For people that are facing their own headwinds, own adversity, what's one thing that you suggest they can do to keep moving forward despite that storm?
Every day we look through the world, and depending on what we're facing, our viewpoint is either negative, positive, or neutral. But when you look through gratitude goggles, you are looking for things in your immediate vicinity that are...
What's a bold action you would dare our audience listening today to take this week to try to build that risk-taking muscle?
I have what I call a technique that I call the triple A, Tyler. And it stands for
This is Elemental Conversations, where leadership isn't just talked about, it's tested. I'm Tyler, your host, helping you lead with your values, push through adversity, roll with change, and make bold decisions. New episodes every Monday. Subscribe on YouTube, follow us on Instagram, and if you're ready to challenge the status quo, then get ready to let the alchemy of education ignite your passion for learning.
Fire, earth, wind, water. This is the Elemental Educator. And now your host, Tyler Como.
Today we're joined by Chris DT, a family man, online middle school special education teacher, professional speaker, author, runner, martial artist, and pop culture enthusiast. He says AKA geek, we're going to keep it as enthusiast. He's also a survivor of life-threatening diseases who uses his story and message to inspire and motivate others to overcome their challenges with gratitude, positivity, and resilience, and achieve the greatness on their own terms. Welcome to the Elemental Educator podcast, Chris. It is my pleasure to have you here today.
Greatly appreciated. And I have to say that that term geek, it's not a negative term.
You're right, it's not.
Use it as a slight, but it's basically just someone who likes something more than another person. I mean, you could be a football geek or a football geek. You could be a Star Wars geek right here. You can be an engineering geek. A geek is just someone who likes something a lot. And so
That's right.
I just love pop culture. I love using it as a way to connect with my audiences.
Geek it is. I call myself a nerd all the time too, because I just love to learn about certain things. And so I see no negative connotations to them either. And, you know, Chris, I want to get in to the bigger question because there's a really good story here, which is how did you get to where you are now?
Well, it all starts with something innocuous, like all stories do, whether they be great stories or otherwise. It was March 18th, 2015. And I was helping my wife, Becky, whose birthday is as we're recording this today. So happy birthday, Becky, from
Happy birthday, Becky.
3 or 4 months earlier. I was helping her get our kids ready for school and daycare. At the time, we had a 6-year-old and 2-year-old twins. She taught at the local high school here in town, and I taught online. Yes, in 2015, there was online teaching way before the pandemic. And so as an opportunity to help her out, I was flying one of the twins back and forth to our detached garage. I went too far to the right. I scraped the back of my right hand on our exterior garage wall. I held the twin in one of my arms, and I looked at my hand and saw that it wasn't bleeding. And so I quoted one of my favorite movies of all time, "'Tis but a scratch." So I figured, okay, I'll just follow up, put the kid into the car seat. By the way, do you know that movie, Tyler?
I recognize the quote, but I don't know what movie it's from.
Oh, maybe you're too young. Monty Python and the Holy Grail.
There we go. Yeah.
All
Yeah.
right.
Letting myself down on
I
that one.
told you, geek. Anyway, so I put him into the car seat. I kissed them all goodbye. And as they drove off on their way, I went back into the house to wash off my non-bleeding hand and start my day of online teaching. 3 days later, I wake up to find a lacrosse ball-sized bump on my right elbow. I go to the urgent care clinic here in town. They say, well, it could be bursitis, but keep an eye on it just in case. So, as a good patient, I did. I kept an eye on it as the bump grew and grew and grew until my right arm was 3 times the size of my left. I like to joke and say that I was the Incredible Hulk in mid transformation, but I wasn't as angry and smashy as I was sicky and tiredy. So we decided, well, this is not normal. So Becky found a babysitter for the kids, and she took me back to the emergency room. The urgent care clinic was now the emergency room, and they quickly admitted me. They took my vitals, found that I also had become septic, which was another whole issue apart from my ballooning arm. They kept me overnight. Next morning, the doctor came to my hospital bed and said something I will never forget, Tyler. She said, Mr. Gordon, this is beyond us. We can do nothing more for you here. Where do you want to go? Well, I live in Minnesota, and the Mayo Clinic is 2 hours east in Rochester. So I told her to send me there. And not only is Mayo in Rochester, but also Becky's parents, Bill and Dee, are in Rochester. So I knew Becky and the kids and the dog had a place to stay for the few days that I'm sure this would work out. Me with my advanced knowledge in, biology, being a special education teacher, I knew this would take no time to resolve, right? So they fly me to Rochester, and that's where they diagnosed me with necrotizing fasciitis, also known as flesh-eating bacteria. Once the doctors knew exactly what was going on, they quickly whisked me away to surgery, and from that point, I was out for 5 days in a medically induced coma. They did a number of surgeries on me, removing a lot of the skin, tissue, and bacteria from my arm, shoulder, chest, and back. They found that they were going to amputate my right arm because they found that the infection had gone so far into my right arm that the right arm had to go. Taylor, what do you notice?
You have a right arm.
I still have a right arm. And that's because the attending occupational therapist saw that I still had hand function. So they elected to remove a 15-inch by 4-inch or a 40 centimeter by 10 centimeter flap of skin from my left leg and place it at my right hand and forearm. And so since this is my thigh on my hand, I call this my thand. Copyright pending. But now I have a hole in my leg that is not going to close normally. So they take out one of my quadricep muscles, my vastus lateralis, and then they take a shoestring type contraption called the Jacob's ladder, put it on the inside of the wound, and knobs on the other side, on each side of the wound. And so
Yeah.
they can tighten the wound over time with the knobs.
Yeah.
And then
Jacob's
finally,
ladder is one of the most painful things I've heard.
it is not fun.
Yeah.
But I was
Yeah.
on a lot of pain medications, so I didn't feel anything. And also, I was out in a coma. So if I did wake up and realize that was a whole other issue.
Right.
But then I still had all the exposed area from the debridement. So they took a skin graft harvester. Imagine a cheese slicer that took P90X. I mean, this thing was bulked up. It was huge. And so they ran that up and down my my back and my thighs to get enough harvesting samples for my exposed areas. So that most of that happened in 5 days' time. When I woke up from my coma, I had a new body, but I also had something else going on. They removed all the physical bacteria, but now I was faced with what I call personal bacteria. Questions that were ruminating in my mind to which I had no answers. What was I going to be able to do with my new body when I fully recovered? If I fully recovered, how was I going to relate to Becky, the kids, other family members and friends, my colleagues, our neighbors? How was I going to handle little stresses like another cut? How was I going to handle big stresses? How are we going to deal with this financially, socially? All of those questions just stuck in my head for the first couple of days after waking up. And I had no answers. And you ever been in that situation, Tyler, where you have questions and no answers?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, it's a scary situation because you don't know where to turn. And I never knew anyone with necrotizing fasciitis. I never even heard of it. I've heard of the term flesh-eating bacteria, but that's a scientific term they use in movies to ramp up the tension and how scary a situation was. I didn't know it was an actual thing. Well, luckily, I didn't have much time to have that personal bacteria ruminate in my mind because during one of her visits, Becky sat down next to me in my hospital room and started telling me of all the wonderful things that people are doing in our lives for us. For example, our neighbors, for example, were shoveling and snow blowing our driveways and our walkways. Local law enforcement was keeping an eye on the house because we live in a small town and the term flesh-eating bacteria spreads as quickly as the actual bacteria. Everyone knew our situation. We had people stopping by Bill and Dee's house in Rochester, dropping off food and toys and playing with the kids. My brother, Jeff, flew all the way from Michigan. And I am from Michigan, so I'm obligated to show you where I grew up. We grew up north of Flint, and my brother now lives in Muskegon. This is a Michigan thing we do to show you where we live. He flew from Michigan to the Twin Cities and then took a shuttle down from the Twin Cities to Rochester and spent a week and a half with us. Sometimes staying the night in the hospital just to get the latest updates on my condition. He also bought me an iPad, which played a big role in my recovery. People were even donating to a GoFundMe account to help raise enough funds to offset the lost wages I had incurred because I ran out of sick days early in my hospitalization. When everyone chipped in that way, I felt all of that personal bacteria wash away, and I was left with what I now call the attitude of gratitude, or TAG for short. I didn't call it that then, but I knew something had changed. And those previous questions were now replaced by 3 new questions. And those 3 new questions, to answer your question, Tyler, is what brings me here today. It's an increased sense of gratitude that has not only changed my life, but has inspired me to help others better theirs.
Thank you for sharing. That's a very intense story. And there's so many questions that I want to unpack with it. And I'll unpack a few and then we'll get into our first segments. So, coma for 5 days. How long was the total duration in the hospital?
65 days.
65 days. Holy cow.
Yeah.
That's quite a bit of time.
I missed an
Yeah.
entire quarter of school.
Yeah.
which
And
is obviously, if you do the math, that's a one. That's 1/4, and it's huge because that is a lot of time missed for special tests.
yep.
And thankfully, we had a fantastic substitute teacher, guest teacher, as I like to call them, come in and fill my role. But it was remarkable, just
Yeah.
how it seemed to the world just seemed to change because it was like I'm going in winter, coming out late spring. So it was a little bit of time there.
And were they able to pinpoint what started it? Was it the garage door itself that must have had something on it, or the water that you ran your hand under?
Very good question. Many people don't uh, think about the water, but it was because there was Streptococcus pyogenes, group A
Hmm.
strep, in the area, and it had apparently gotten on the garage wall, and I just happened
Yeah.
to scrape my hand. It could have happened some other way, perhaps, but yeah, that's where they said it's most likely to have happened.
Okay. Wow. That's heavy. At the time that this is released, I'll have undergone a knee surgery to replace a torn ACL and MCL, and they told me it's 8 to 9 months for a full athletic recovery, but not the same where I'm not going to be getting induced into a coma or anything like that. But I'll miss some time of my work as well. But
Yeah. Well,
it's
I
an
hope you
intense.
recover well with that. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm drawing from your experience and what you're taking from it, right? And we do the same thing for the same reasons in wanting to impact and create purpose and make a difference in what we're doing. And so that doesn't stop, and it shouldn't stop. And first, we're glad you're okay and are using it to create tag. And I want to get into, because this is heavily rooted in values here, Chris, and I want to get into what those values are. And it's going to bring us to our first segment on grounded moments.
3, 2, 1.
Rooted in wisdom, driven by purpose. Welcome to Grounded Moments. And Chris, to build some momentum here, we're going to flip the script a little bit from the conversation we had and play a little bit of a game, okay? So this game is called Principle or Preferences. It's meant to be rapid fire. I'm going to just read a question, and you have to say whether it's a principle or a value that people should all encompass and live by, or whether it's just a preference, meaning it's okay if not everybody gets in on it. Sounds good? All right, this game reveals your leadership non-negotiables in 10 seconds or less. Leaders should never schedule meetings on Fridays.
Preference.
Professional development should include movement or games.
Principle.
Everyone should have a go-to quote.
Preference.
You should respond to DMs from your team within an hour.
Preference with a principle with a caveat. What time of day? Are we talking during the work day, or are we talking all 24 hours?
No explanations. I
All
think
right.
that'll shift
Well,
you
then
to preference.
I'm going to go with preference then.
Yeah. Staff group photos are essential for school culture.
Preference.
It's better to underpromise than overdeliver.
Principle.
Every leader should have a visible desk space, not behind a closed door.
Preference.
You should always close your laptop when someone walks into your office.
Preference.
Team celebrations should include personalized awards.
Principle.
And leaders should post regularly on social media about reflective processes to show good practice.
Preference.
There we go. Some quick non-negotiables established. Thanks for playing along in the game, Chris. And before the show, I asked you to bring a quote onto the show for us to talk about. And the one that you chose to bring is pass on perfection and go for greatness. And I want to start by wondering, where did you find this quote and why did you choose to bring it on the show today?
Well, Tyler, this is a quote that actually I created, or I mean, I've never seen it before when I thought of it, but it came from looking at my own body. After my hospitalizations, I look like a discount Deadpool or a zombie in mid transformation or Anakin Skywalker fresh out of Mustafar. I my body has changed and it is not perfect in terms of how how I started this world, but I felt that it reflected a lot of our existence. Because when you look at a billboard as you're driving down the highway, or if you look at a magazine ad or a TV commercial, whatever they're trying to sell you, be it a car, a model is trying to sell some makeup, that delicious cheeseburger from your favorite establishment, how long did it take for those items or people to look as perfect as they do in those ads? For the model, it could have been a couple hours. That car, they could have taken a lot of time and care to make sure it looks perfect, no scratches, no dents, and to have the right lighting. And we know that for food pictures, they do doctor the food. They put special, you know, glosses on it, and so it looks as appetizing as possible. But once that picture's taken, that model is going to wipe that makeup right off. How long is that car going to go without a dent? And that hamburger just goes right into the trash. That perfection is fleeting, if not outright futile. Instead, I want to inspire people to go for greatness. Whatever you're inspiring to do, if you aspire to be a great runner, whatever great is, if you aspire to be an athlete in another regard, or a student or a teacher, be consistent in your practice. Practice every day if you can. Be diligent in your efforts. When you do those consistent practices, don't just go through the motions. Put effort into everything that you do because time is not infinite. Use your time wisely. And then be persistent and perseverant in your efforts. You're going to have bad days. And how you show up in the bad days is indicative of your desire much more than if you're having a better day. So be consistent in your efforts, be consistent in your practice, be diligent in your efforts, and be perseverant in the bad days as much as the good days. And sometime you might reach perfection in some regard, but you will always be great.
Chris, we've heard this incredible journey of your story, and now we've heard this quote that you've brought in, and a great way to explain why there's a shift from striving for perfection to just striving to be great. What values would you say your journey right now is rooted in? What is it that's holding you together to keep you going through with this message?
Well, when I am trying to reach for my own goals, I try to reflect what I tell people with that quote because I'm currently, as we're recording this, a week and a half away from running Grandma's Marathon, which starts in Two Harbors, Minnesota, and ends in Duluth, Minnesota. And I want to qualify for the Boston Marathon. And my qualifying time has to be under 3 hours, 20 minutes. It was 3 hours, 25 minutes, but there's so many people qualifying for Boston. Apparently, it's a popular race that they had to cut down the time because they only allow 30,000 runners every year. So I have to run less than 3 hours, 20 minutes. And on top of that, I have to run an additional, I have to run faster than that even because with so many runners qualifying, they put an additional bubble on, and it's usually 5 or 6 minutes. And so I'm striving to run this marathon in 3 hours, 10 minutes. Now, and
Mhm.
I've been training for months and months and months. I would love to say that my body is primed to go and I'm going to crush it no matter what. That said, I'm 50 years old. A 50-year-old body gets nicks and bumps and injuries that take more time to recover than a 30-year-old body or a 20-year-old body. And so I'm working through those injuries and I am constantly feeling myself questioning, okay, am I going to make this? And obviously the answer is who knows? There's 26 miles or 42 kilometers is a long distance and a lot can happen in that time. And so I have to realize, well, what if I don't make it? Well, this race happens on June 21st. I'm sure June 22nd is going to come along and June 23rd, and the world's going to keep moving, and I have to know how to respond properly to that. So I need to prepare myself for, well, if I make it, fantastic. I'll buy a ticket. And register, buy a ticket to Boston. I'll register for the race, and we'll go from there. If I don't make it, well, I just do the best that I can and go for greatness in that regard. Maybe I give myself a little more time to recover. Maybe take a year or two off for marathon running, focus on other races to build up my foundation so I can give it another go in a couple more years. The same goes with my speaking engagements. I'm reaching out to places all over North America, primarily Minnesota, but also, Canada and Ottawa, or Ontario and the Great Lakes region. And I want to be the best speaker for those teachers and those students and those organizations as possible. Am I going to missay something like the word missay? Who's ever said that before me just now? But am I going to misspeak? Yes, of course. I am not an automaton. I'm not a robot. I need to work through those areas and say, hey, you know what? You are not a robot. You're going to make mistakes. Let's figure out a way to get through those. And so being able to aspire for greatness, but realize that it's not perfection is a daily chore. Not only with speaking and running, but also being a parent, being a teacher, especially, knowing that, hey, I did my best with this lesson plan. It didn't go according to how I wish it would have turned out, but what can I learn from it so I can be better next time?
So, two follow-up questions to that. First of all, the marathon is very exciting, and the first question is: will this be done with the Cape?
I have run in a Cape, but and while I do have a cosplay that I will run one day, um, uh, for a marathon, the Cape has very little drag. This one will not. I'm gonna I'm gonna try
Okay.
to go as bare bones in my appearance as possible, just to restrict weight. But have you ever heard of the anime and manga hero One Punch Man?
I have only from the kids.
Okay, yeah, that is one of my favorite cosplays because we're both bald and skinny. And I actually ran as him for a 5K in last October, and I found that the cape has very little drag. It's a wonderful cape
Yeah.
to run in, and so someday I will wear a cape running a marathon. but not
There we go.
in a week and a half.
Not when you have to do it in under 310 potentially. So I totally get that. Next question here, the follow up. So with that, I'm trying to unpack and determine what value that's rooted in for you, and I'm bouncing between, right, like experience and your experience chasing, and I'm hearing a little bit of family come up. I'm wondering, have you taken time to sit down and write down what exactly it is, those single words, maybe 2 words, that you're doing everything for?
I have thought about that a lot, Tyler. And because marathon training does take away from your family. And one of the first things I did was I tried to find, when can I train so it's has as little impact as possible on my family. And thankfully, I am someone who can get up and run at 5:30 in the morning when I need to do longer runs. Uh, when I need to do those really long runs, those 30 to 35 kilometer hauls that take me around and maybe outside my town. I wake up really early for that on Saturdays, or usually we don't have a lot going on Saturdays, so our schedule isn't too jam packed. Um, always clear thing, always keeping good communication with my wife about when these races are happening to make sure that they don't conflict with other things. And then I've been thinking about them a lot in terms of why. Why am I doing this? No one's making me run a marathon. It's not part of my
Mhm.
job description. But it's because I'm part of a community now and have been for the last 10 years of people who have also experienced necrotizing fasciitis, but they don't come out as fortunate as I do. They lose their arm, they lose their leg,
Mhm.
they are forever changed in a way where they can't go out and run despite missing a leg muscle. I am doing this to show them that, hey, even though none of us is perfect anymore, we can still push our limits. We can still go out there and do the best that we can, no matter
Right.
if it's running, teaching, painting, podcasting. What we can put our efforts towards, it can be done with a level of greatness, and to dig deep to find that within ourselves so we can inspire others to do the same.
So I from that, Chris, I hear a value of relationships in general, right? And wanting to push through as a group and collaborate on that. And with that, we've talked about what you're rooted in and what you're pushing for and what really drives you. We've also talked a ton about adversity. So this next segment will be quicker than how it typically is, but I want to move into our air element and talk about some headwinds and tailwinds. Through storms and surges, discover the lessons from headwinds and tailwinds, where we focus on the challenges that test us and the forces that help us move forward. Chris, the reason I said that this segment would be a little bit quicker is we segue to a story about adversity. But before we even got into segments, we had this incredible moment of you sharing this very heavy story of adversity you faced. And so I want to come back to it and actually just ask a couple follow-up questions for you around that. And the first one I want to get into is, what was the turning point where things started to shift in your own mindset? Was there a specific aha moment of clarity for you?
It was that conversation with Becky, because, like I described, I had that personal bacteria. And when she started telling me all of those things that people were doing, I could feel that personal bacteria washing away. But not only that, Tyler, I also felt an obligation, because all those people were stepping up in various ways to help us. And I knew that going forward, whatever I did, I was going to have to, give as much as I had, because just giving up, just accepting life as it is, to me would be a slap in the face to anyone who stepped up to help us to shovel our driveways, to keep an eye on the house, to donate money or food, to spend time with my
Yep.
family. I felt that I owed them in a positive way. I know sometimes we say, "Oh, I owe that person," and there's a negative connotation to it. But I owe it to those people to make this second chance of mine as good as it can be. And that has propelled me to do all the various things related to this second chance that I have. Be it the marathon, be it public speaking, be it writing a book, be it teaching, be it being a dad and a husband. I want to make the most of the second chance because a lot of people don't have it. They're not here anymore because of reasons. And so I want to make sure that based on that conversation I had with Becky, that I do the best that I can for those people who gave to us to show that that donation was not in vain.
Mhm. Yeah, I hear you 100% there, Chris. Now, for people that are facing their own headwinds, own adversity, what's one thing that you suggest they can do to keep moving forward despite that storm?
Well, I know that it's really easy for me to say, hey, you can go ahead and push through and run a marathon and write a book and get on stage. But thankfully, there aren't 7 billion Chris DT Gordons around. That would be really weird. And I would almost feel like a deity. And we don't want that at all. So, whatever you're facing, what I suggest is you put on what I call gratitude goggles. Every day we look through the world, and depending on what we're facing, our viewpoint is either negative, positive, or neutral. But when you look through gratitude goggles, you are looking for things in your immediate vicinity that are that make you happy, that help you in any task that you have, that basically make your life a little easier. And they don't have to be items that you use every day. For example, I have this snow globe that a student gave me a number of years ago. Now, I don't walk by and I grab the snow globe, I shake it every single day. You can see there's a little dust on there. It's been a while since I've done this. But this snow globe is a gift, not only at that time for me, but it's also a reminder that, hey, I impacted someone's life positively by giving my best, by being there, by showing up and not just going through the motions. I look at my keyboard that is right in front of me as we're talking, and I think about all the little keys that help me communicate properly to you, to other people. Have you ever tried writing an email without the letter E, Tyler? It's not
I,
that
I
fun.
have played that before where you remove one of the
Yeah,
keys. Yeah.
exactly. So having every one of those keys on my keyboard is a blessing because it helps me send messages easier. I look and I think we are talking about robots earlier. I have about 2 dozen transformers to my left. I love transformers. In fact, I bought one last year, a 2-foot transformer for my 50th birthday gift to myself because I could. I love transformers. I don't play with them every day. I don't transform them every day, but each of them brings a memory that I cherish. I look at my trash can, my University of Michigan trash can. It's beat up. It's obviously got trash in it, but that makes me smile, gives me a place to put my garbage. It's fantastic. And so the more that we can look around ourselves and see the positivity in our lives, the greater chance we can develop a more positive mindset. Because when you think about it, a lot of things have to go right for our daily functions to proceed. For example, for us to have this conversation right now, we both had to have some kind of internet connection. We both had to have to have decent weather because the weather can affect this kind of communication. We both had to have to have lights so we can see each other, microphones, speakers, motherboards that are working properly. There are hundreds, maybe thousands of little tiny actions and procedures that are happening right now to make it possible for us to talk right now. I am thankful for each one of those. And it makes this conversation even richer to know that, wow, a lot of things had to come into play for this to happen. And that happens all the time in our world. Maybe not in a podcast interview, but in a conversation. Our cars are pretty complicated. Trust me, I am not the most mechanically inclined person in the world. But I know enough to know that there has to be a lot going on in the car for it to work properly. And for me to jump in my car and go from point A to point B, I'm thankful for all those processes. And yes, that does not mean bad things don't happen. But by focusing more on the positive things that are happening in our lives, we can develop a kind of armor to protect us from the adverse effects of those negative things. Yes, we have to face them, but we can face them in a more positive light so we can move on in our day and our day becomes a net positive rather than saying, well, all these great things went right, but then I got a paper cut and this day is ruined just because of that paper cut. So many people live their lives that way. They focus on the negative, and that in part, that affects their mindset, and then it sometimes affects their actions.
Yeah, and it would affect their actions. Absolutely. What a great length of examples of all the things around us that come together and enable us to look at things with a positive lens and a great perspective. You know, Chris, the one thing is if there were 7 billion Chris's, it would actually remove the ability for you to call yourself a geek because it would void the point of what a geek is, right? Because you would all have that same level of knowledge and wanting to know more about that specific thing. So you would lose the title. Am I right in that? And we want to keep that.
7 billion me's, the world would cease. Not only biologically, but also because we would not know how to work a car. We would not. There are so many things I don't know how to do. And I'm thankful that we're all different. We all have different strengths and areas of interest. And so, yes, you are right. The world would not be a better place if there were 7 billion me's.
You know, before I go to the next segment, Chris, you made me think of, I'm fascinated with artificial intelligence right now. And you just said that, if there were 7 billion of you, you wouldn't know how to work a car. And there's a specific channel on YouTube. And what they do is they program a bunch of different types of AI bots and ask them to complete a task. And it's how long it takes them to learn to complete the task. And one of them was as simple as walking. And they just dropped a bunch of like blobs in that then formed legs or whatever they needed to form to make it work to go 100 meters in under like 32 seconds, I think it was. And it took something like 890 attempts before somebody was successfully able to cross it in that amount of time. And so maybe you can't right now, but one day, you never know, you might be the next car guy, right? Like, 50 is running marathons. Maybe 60 is that old fixer upper. You never know what life is going to bring at you.
But I'm just thankful I don't have to get to that point.
Right. Yeah. And Thankful for other people around us to help us with those. All right. So, after talking about adversity here, we are going to talk about some of the changes that we've implemented to overcome the adversity, take some action, and do our own things. And that's going to bring us to ripples of change. Small shifts, big waves. This is Ripples of Change, where we dive into the power of embracing change and making waves that last. And Chris, this game is called Here's the Trick. So I'm going to just I'm going to ask you a question. And in one sentence, two sentences, I want the trick. I want the real thing that works to try to address the question that I'm asking. Okay. What would you tell your past self before walking into a meeting? This is what we're trying to get at. So let's start with, what's one sentence that calms your nerves before public speaking?
The spotlight is really on them and not on me.
How do you win over someone who's clearly not a fan of change?
Ask them what is better about your life now.
What's a quick fix for a messy group conversation?
Tell a self-deprecating joke.
How do you re-energize a team that's clearly over it?
Think about the next time you're going to get together.
What's one tip for staying present during back-to-back meetings?
Compliment someone in the group on something they've done or something that they are wearing.
I love the ending to that one there, Chris. The idea of just spreading, we talked about spreading that positive energy to people, and that's one great way to do it. Now, with this, you're doing some incredible things. What is a recent change that you've embraced or led?
Good question. I have changed the way I reach out to people in terms of trying to procure speaking engagements. And I found that while I'm not swimming or, in speaking engagements, that my connections have increased. And so I'm thankful for that change because it helps me communicate with more people and get those balls rolling so I can get on stages and help as many people as I can.
Awesome. And so, whenever you implement a change, it often comes down to those two key moments, that first step you're taking and the final move that makes it stick. And it sounds like we're still in the process of taking steps to get something working. What is it that you're trying right now that seems to be working?
Well, it's like I said, going back to greatness, it's being consistent with actions, being diligent with processes, and being perseverant. I'm reaching out to people. Right now, it's on LinkedIn. I'm reaching out to principals, superintendents, and trying to get conversations going with them about how we can collaborate. And when I make those connections, I see their posts and I interact with the post. I, put a comment in there so they see that it's just not just someone, oh, I like that picture of those kids. I want to interact with it because there is a story there. When you think about someone's post, a lot of times we're seeing an end result. It could be a gathering that took months to plan. And if it's like the
That's
end
right.
of a school year, you think about, well, 9 months is a long time. But each of those kids in that picture experience not only 9 months of school, but 9 months of life. And they all had
Yep.
different challenges, different family dynamics to work through, different friend and social situations that could have popped up. But whatever happened, they overcame all the negative and experienced the positive that brought them to that moment where that picture was taken. And so I like to try to celebrate that because a lot of times when we're working with students, we are thinking about, okay, how can we get this good grade on this assignment? Kids are
Mm-hmm.
going through a lot. I think about my childhood, and if I grew up in a world that had cell phones that were also cameras and video recorders, I don't want to think about what would show up on the internet. You know, and not only and then we have the internet itself being what it is. And we should applaud kids for, making it through a day and getting their homework done and having positive connections because there is a lot of potential for negative things to happen. And so we have to give kids a little more credit, I think, than we do today because of the added invention of the internet that we as kids growing up in the 80s and 90s and maybe the early aughts didn't have to as much.
I completely agree. I completely agree with that, Chris. And what a world they live in too, right? And we often forget, especially in that junior high, senior high setting, right? Like they're falling in love for the first time. They're establishing non-negotiables for themselves for the first time. They're starting to discover their identity for the first time. And we've had the advantage of doing it for many, many years. They are going through year one and have no idea how to do it. And there's a lot of frustration that comes with that. And not only are they going through year one, but because of social media and technology, they are seeing everyone go through year one and people do it better than them and people do it worse than them. And there's a lot of self-guilt. There's a lot of self-blame. There's a lot of questions
Judging.
that stem from that they might not even know are questions, but it's wonders and curiosities. And it's such, you're so right that we have to acknowledge that and be able to celebrate it and work with it because it helps the understanding of kids. That translates to adults too, because when adults are doing something for the first time, those same feelings are still there. There's that nervousness, there's that tension, there's frustration that's going to come out of it. And that's that whole, that forming, storming, norming, reforming stages that we talk about whenever a group gets together for the first time, because you're figuring things out. And so I appreciate the insight, Chris, and thanks for sharing the story on that as well. Now, with this, I want to come back to your story. This is a great opportunity to say, Chris, you're trying to make these connections. I love that these connections are starting to lead to better connections for you. How can people get a hold of you, though, if they want to reach out to you and book you?
Thank you for asking that, Tyler. I greatly appreciate it. And before we go any further, I do want to say again, I greatly appreciate this conversation. It's been very enlightening and positively challenging in some ways. They can reach out to me by going to my website, which is chrisdtgordon.com. I am also available on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube at Chris DT Gordon. I have my email address, chris@chrisdtgordon.com. I'm very blessed that my parents did give me two middle names because when you type in Chris DT Gordon, that first page is articles related to me, my website, uh, podcast episodes that feature me. So those are all the different ways you can find me is Googling Chris DT Gordon or go to my website, which is the same with a .com after it. So that's a great way to reach out to me.
And alchemists, will make sure that all of these connections are in the show notes of this episode. So make sure that you check them out on how to get a hold of Chris. And with that, Chris, we're going to segue to our last elemental segment. We've talked about the values that have grounded us, the adversity we've faced, the changes that we're trying to implement and how. And now it's getting to the bold decisions and the risks that we take, which is the fire element, which is going to bring us to spark or burn. Ignite your ideas, face the flames. This is Spark or Burn, where we talk about bold decisions, big risks, and the fires that either spark success or burn lessons into our memories. And Chris, this is a this or that style game. It's called Final Answer. So I'm going to polarize the room a bit and give you some things, and you have to pick one or the other,
good.
okay? Small team or big team?
Small team.
For your summer calendar, fully off or lightly structured?
Lightly structured.
Lead the icebreaker or skip it altogether.
Lead with the icebreaker.
Digital typing or pen and paper.
Digital typing.
Silent reading time or a discussion circle.
Discussion circle.
Take the spotlight or pass the mic.
Take the spotlight.
Feedback now or wait until it's polished.
Wait till it's polished.
Zero your inbox or the search bar is good enough.
Search bar.
And mentor one or motivate many.
Motivate many. I think I would go against my.
And I don't think there's a
What's
wrong
that?
answer on that. I was just saying I don't think there's a wrong answer on that one.
I was gonna say though, if I did go with the former, then would I be disrespecting the latter because of my chosen vocation of professional speaker? So yeah,
That's right. Yeah. Absolutely right. There we go. Some firm non-negotiables. You have to live with them, and I think that will be okay. Chris, I want to know, what is the wildest yes that you've ever said yes to? And then what happened next?
well, I have to say that it was the yes to, am I going to chase this girl I met 3 months ago and live in another state and move from Michigan to Minnesota? Because I met my wife at her brother's bachelor/bachelorette party, and within 3 months, I totally moved my life 500-600 miles to the west and started living in a new place. And I've been here for 23 years come August.
Wow. That's just wild, right? How those simple yeses can change that whole pathway, right? And I love that worked out for you. And there's so much at stake if things didn't work out along that path. Did you adjust how you made decisions? Did you start to include others? Do you still just make them with yourself in mind?
I definitely have to make decisions with others in mind. Being a husband and father of 3, like when running races, I have to check with Becky. Hey, is this going to work with our schedule? Is it okay if I do this race? Because, for example, with grandmas, it's not only I'm running on a Saturday. Duluth is 4 hours away, and I'm also speaking at a pre-race dinner. So I'm going to be gone most of Friday as well, which affects the family because there's one fewer parent to help run kids, to places, to help take care of the house. So yeah, it's definitely a team effort whenever I go do something on my own, whether it's running or if I go someplace for a speaking engagement. There's always communication happening.
Yeah. And, Chris, bold decisions, they can be intimidating. What's a bold action you would dare our audience listening today to take this week to try to build that risk-taking muscle?
I have what I call a technique that I call the AAA, Tyler. And it stands for actively augmenting your appreciation of someone. What I want you to do is I want you to think of someone in which you share a social circle with them. It could be family member, could be colleague, could be a friend, could be someone you barely know. I want you to remove them from that social circle. And then I want you to think of all the different ways this person positively affects the world around them. And the reason why you're taking them out of that circle is because when we think of people and how they affect the world positively, it's usually how they affect us. But I don't want that. I want you to think about how they affect the world around them. Could be how they parent, could be how they connect with other friends, could be how they do their job or their schooling. It could be how they interact with strangers. But I want you to think about all the different ways this person affects the world around them in a positive way. And then bring them back into that social circle that you share and celebrate that you have a relationship with this fantastic person. I do this with Becky because yes, she's my wife, my partner, my best friend. She's also a fantastic parent, a loving daughter and sister, a brilliant teacher, a great historian, a talented athlete, a brilliant musician, and she is as much of a geek as I am. She just plays it a lot lower, on a lower volume than I do. But she's all of those things. And when I put her back into that social circle that we share, she's still my wife, partner, and best friend. That connection that we have does not change all the great things she has. And the challenge is I want you to do this. I want you to perform the AAA with someone that maybe you don't have such a strong connection with. Unfortunately, we're not best friends with everyone. We have disagreements. We have different points of view. But if you could take someone that maybe you have a different point of view from and look at how they affect the world in a positive way, you might develop a new friendship with them, a new line of thinking, at least some respect and some increased appreciation for how they benefit the world, even though it's in a different way than you do.
Yeah, that's right. And I agree with that completely. And I like the idea of removing them from their norms and seeing what is it that they do from beyond what you just know them as that spreads their appreciation too and impacts others. Alchemists, as we wrap up our episode, I want to take a moment and share my appreciation for your listenership. You're the reason that we're here, you're the inspiration for the show, and I hope that our journey today sparks some points of interest for you. To dive deeper, make sure you subscribe to our monthly newsletter for scholarly insights, actionable strategies, and an in-depth analysis of each episode. Just reach out on our Instagram for the link. And Chris, I just want to take a minute here and say thank you so very much for taking time out of your schedule to connect, collaborate, and empower us all through your lived
Tyler,
experiences.
Again, thank you so much for the opportunity. This has been a very enlightening conversation for me, and I hopefully it serves your audience well.
Thanks for sticking around to the end of the show. If you have feedback, a suggestion, or just want to start a conversation, fire off an email to me, tyler@elementaleducator.com. I actually read them. And if this episode sparked something, leave a review on Apple or Spotify. It helps more leaders find the show. And don't forget to subscribe on YouTube, where I put out additional content. I'll see you next time, same place.